Arnaud Lagarde, thank you very much for joining.
My pleasure.
So, Arnaud, where I would like to start is a little bit about you. So, you've worked at VP level in sales across Abby, Okta, Pipe, humanizing, autonomy, and also automation anywhere, among many others. We actually have a relationship with Automation Anywhere when you worked there too. So, I'm not even sure if there's any crossover there with the stuff that we did. But tell us a bit more about you, where you've come, and also a lot of the companies you've worked at are very kind of on the cutting edge, I would say, of things. So like obviously when you're at Automation Anywhere, automation RPA was very big.
Yeah.
Now AI.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So look, I spent my life in sales. In fact, when I decided what I was going to study, I had IT and business, and I had both schools that were giving me a place for these two roles. And in the end, I thought I'll favor experience, and I went to sales, okay, and business schools. And but I still have that love for technology. So when I did my first sort of business venture, I went into technology, and after, I guess, I went from one role to another, selling services, then technology, then automation, then AI. I think today everything's AI anyway. But I always wanted to. I guess I probably have got one of the very important skills of sales guys, like curiosity. I always want to discover new things. Some people tell me that, God, you change a lot, you do things. I said, life's too short. You got to discover, you got to experience. So that's me, and that's how I've always lived my life. Always discovering new stuff.
That's also probably a really nice way to think about it as well, having a kind of selling services from the offset, because every new technology that comes across, it's sure you see all these AI tools flying off the shelves here, left, right, and center, product-led growth. But actually, when it comes to like those enterprise contracts, in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to that. How can you convey it? A service is basically attached to it because no one fully
Yeah.
understands it. So it makes
Well, I mean, usually a technology that is not implemented is shelfware. Okay.
yeah.
So you've got, I know a lot of sales organizations are thinking about their product and how well their product is positioned. But in the end, you should be thinking about outcome, and you should be
Mm.
thinking about what is going to be the impact and the outcome of my technology for this customer. It might differ from industry to industry. And, you need to implement it, you need to manage it, you need to support it, you need to secure it. So I think these early days of, in fact, my career where I was, orchestration complex solutions and implementing has served me very well, because I've got that sort of customer, view. How they're going to use it, how they're going to implement it. And it helps you really, put yourself in their seat, because if you've implemented technology, you know that quite a lot of things can go wrong. So experience is everything, you know what can go wrong. So you sort of put a safe arm around it and make sure it carries on, and I think, the role of sales and has evolved a lot, because before it was like, can you pitch? Can you pitch quick? Can you sort of wow the customers and get him to sign? Now, I think the buyers are a lot more savvy. They know that, you can make a big pitch, but in the end, will the product be used? There's a cost of change. Before, they didn't think about the cost of change. Now they understand the cost of change. So there's a lot more things that as a salesman you have to manage. There's a lot more stakeholders, and there's also a lot more risk, that the customer is aware of. So you spend your time, orchestrating your journey with the customers and making sure that you get commitment at every step of the journey to make sure that you are, in fact, making real progress versus just keeping the interest alive. I think if you look at a lot of the sales deals that, that never, that close, I think the most used loss reason is no decisions. Sometimes they'll say price is too high, but when you go and check, they never bought anything anyway. So, the keeping that momentum, that commitment, getting people aligned, I always said to my sales guys, make sure you validate an early business case with the customers. This is why we do it. Are you sure we're doing this? Because this is what's going to happen. So you need to be committed to it. Will we go and pitch that to the economic buyer together? Yes. Get some commitment along the way. Document everything, mutual action plan or joint action plan, whatever people want to do. It's there for a reason. Writing things down, getting your stakeholders to commit, I think is that's what we have to do today in sales, because deals are longer, so you need to keep that commitment going for longer.
There's some great context there, and I know some of the questions cover the follow-on questions I had on that, for example, like where it's going. But yeah, momentum is everything, and I learned that too late. I always thought you'd be losing deals to the competition. I say too late. I've still got like most of my career to go, unless crazy exit. But yeah, momentum is everything, and that no decision really can kill deals.
Yeah. Momentum, speed of execution. I remember, I think it was, 2 years after I arrived in the UK, I was doing this deal with the big transport and logistic companies. And this was global deal implementation in all their warehouse and depots. They were going to print stuff. They were going to use our technology. We spent everything. We mapped everything. Everything was, right. And, the day before, I speak to my champions and say, everything's okay? Yes, everything's okay. The CIO is going to be here. The head of procurement is here. They're all here. Tomorrow we sign. And then I arrived in the morning and I saw the face of, this guy that I won't say the name, but I do remember. And I could see he's not looking me straight. And I remember we going all the stairs, and I quickly go up and say, "What's happening?" He said, "Oh, it's too late. I can't tell you. They're going to tell you. The CIO is not here." The night before, it was one night. The night before, they found out, the business needed a new e-commerce solution, digitizing some of the process. They need £1 million, and they took the £1 million that they were going to give us. I mean, the deal was signed the year after. But, speed of execution, orchestrations, always trying to find out a little bit more what's happening around,
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask the questions, you don't necessarily know. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. But, usually in sales, ignorance bites you here, So
some of the stuff that you're saying is already touching a few pain points for me, because I've lost deals towards the end of last year for literally kicking my feet like a couple of weeks just to send something back. I can empathize with why it does happen, because there's so much going on, but also, it's catastrophic if you haven't got the system in place for that. So Arnaud, really appreciate your time on here, and we'll go a bit more in depth into some of those questions. Are you ready for question 1?
Here we
Great.
go.
I still think we need some like suspenseful music. Maybe we'll post-edit it in. Like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So challenge 1, account focus versus execution. So I said this to Ali last, so I asked him the similar question. But, when teams do focus on a smaller number of high accounts, where does that execution often break down? And what I did say to Ali was, I used to work in construction a long time ago, and they said this phrase, which is, theory is a wonderful thing, but it never works in practice. Probably the reason why our construction industry is on its floor. But what about when it comes to sales and marketing?
I think it always comes down to the same thing. Every time you pass the ball from somebody to another team, the ball can drop. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that you need to understand is, these small accounts, why have they been chosen? Because sometimes that's the problem. A new rep arrives. I saw that the other day in one of my sales director, and he gives him 30 accounts. Here's 30 accounts. And I happened to be in the office, and the sales rep said, "Oh, by the way, did you have a say in these 30 accounts?" No. Okay, show me the account. And there might have been a thinking over this, but it was definitely not obvious. 30 accounts, all very different, no real insight, a list of accounts. So, the first thing is there might have been a reason why he chose this account. And I think sometimes that's the problem. If the insight is not passed from the strategy and the reason why we're focusing on that territory, you first can lose somebody very quickly. Okay. Right. So I think what's important is, that collective thinking is important. And then also, making sure that the insight is passed down. There might have been some very good reason, but it was not obvious. So, how do you get, then the sales guys are got to go and try to find his own insight and his own reason and their own reason why. And that is waste. And it means that the strategy is probably different than the plan that the sales are going to make his own.
Mm,
So you have to make sure that there's a very good understanding of why these accounts are here. Now, I think execution on large accounts it's a real program management work. Yeah. You have multiple stakeholders, multiple locations. You have sometimes conflicting regulations from one to the next. So it depends what you sell, but you might have some privacy laws, you might have some infosec reasons that are different. So, orchestration of all of this is sometimes very complicating. And the other thing as well is if you have small number of accounts, you obviously have, help them to be high value, which means that you're going to put a lot of resources to win these accounts, which might be your pre-sales team, your implementation team. You might need some, senior exec engagement. So it's important to have a very well aligned strategy and plan at the outset, then making sure that the execution is flawless.
sure.
So
It's
that's sometimes I think why things break down, because lack of poor communication to start with, poor strategy, and then people are not quite sure why
yeah,
they're keeping these again.
easy to just from a marketing standpoint or any from a leadership standpoint to be like, hey, here's the account score. These were the top, 300 accounts. We'll divide it between the 10 salespeople accordingly. But yeah, I think also it's the balancing act. I know this comes in the next question, so we'll move on. Of like speed, you get speed from clarity as well. So it's like I've seen some sales battle cards before, and I'm like, 95% of this is just like it just doesn't matter. I need like these 3 points. So it's
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
balancing act there.
yeah, yeah.
But
I think that's quantity versus quality is always the thing. I think there's one questions later. Maybe we can talk about that. No, be focused, but be mindful of why you're focused
yeah,
on the account and what is expected from the sales team and all the other teams. Yeah.
well, especially if they're new as well, like you said, like a
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
luck. There we
Yeah.
go.
Yes, it
Right.
did feel a little bit like that at the time. I was like, and then also, if you're gonna give a few account to somebody,
Yeah,
these days, if you want to be a good sales guy, you have to know your customers, you have to know their industry, so you have to do quite a bit of education of yourself on common problems that your customers are likely to think. So I think for me, that's why when I give account to somebody, I usually at least make sure that there's at least some industry commonality, because what you might learn on the industry on one will be useful for the other one. And then
mm,
you can start having conversations saying, well, when I was talking to so and so about this, that this was their view. You're in the same industry. What's your view? Then you start having conversations. So having meaningful conversations can sometimes be driven by preparation. And if you have to prepare 20 different industry, 20 different account, 20 different geography,
yeah, you're
it's a
screwed.
drain. It's a drain on productivity. But yes, I've seen it. I was like, what?
So
And it's the same for the outbound team. Run campaign by communality. Start on one industry, go on LinkedIn, start posting, make yourself seen as a bit of an industry leader. Something like that. Start that way, and then you'll learn, and then you can repost, and you can have conversations and stuff like that. If you have like 20 different industry campaign product to run at the same time, it's just overwhelming.
for sure, yeah, it definitely helps, and it just uncovers new opportunities that you wouldn't just expect. So you've kind of already answered this one, but challenge 2 was around that prioritization versus action piece, right? So let's take that 30 account, 30 accounts to go after. What's harder for those reps? Knowing which accounts like matter most, or, how to, you kind of answered it, knowing how to engage them effectively once it's
Yeah.
agreed. So,
So I might have a slightly also different thing. So defining the priority of account, you can get a lot of data and a lot of insight. I mean, these days we have tools, we have so many tools, insight data, impact, all these. So you can have a pretty well, as long as it's communicated properly, you should have loads of data on an account. So making the prioritization is a data job. In fact, these days, it's an analytics job. Why should I use this? Why you map this. Now, when it comes to how to engage, I think sometimes this is where, these first 2, 3 touch point of engagements can be quite quite difficult because, as a sales guy now, you've got to be interesting. So people need to think, okay, this guy knows his stuff. You have to be interested. You have to show them that you care about them.
Hmm.
So, it's a bit of a balancing act also from a psychological, behavioral point of view. You haven't got much time. You got to get them, so the engagement is quite key, and that's quite difficult. We sit sometimes sales leaders with marketing leaders. Yes, we'll do a territory plan, blah, 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 blah. Go and sell. Well, okay, go and sell. But as we know, some sales guys will engage critically, and they're very good at making themselves interesting, so people talk to them. And then some sales guys don't have many things, but they have one deal, and this deal close. So people have got different foundation, behavioral foundation, but that's really the key. How do you keep the momentum? You also have these days, you almost have to negotiate internally as well as negotiate externally with the customer. So you have to know how to motivate people, how to get them interested. You have to show them that if they're with you, they succeed versus the other one and you're going to fail, So there's engagement. I think that's going to be, I think we need to do more on this. In fact, I know that there are new tools like, not necessarily new tools, but, tools like Gong and, Curve and a lot of other tools that are thinking of helping efficiency of engagement with the sales team. But I think there's a lot more to do here. We know what we know based on experience, and experience shape behavior. So now we're going to have to try to find ways to fake this or to accelerate this, or maybe we'll just build bots and just get rid of the sales guys altogether.
Well, that sounds dystopian. I've got a question on that one towards the end.
Okay.
Right. Challenge 3, complex account deals. So, you've worked on a few big enterprise accounts, right? More people than ever. Where do you think companies and go-to-market teams struggle the most, or like the reps struggle the most? Is it like the multi-threading aspect? Is it getting all the right decision makers in the same room? We mentioned the word momentum a gazillion times. Is that probably?
Well, I think, in fact, in reality, these are all, the multi-threading, the qualification. This is what's going to give you momentum, in fact. So
what does your process look like on that as well, Arnaud, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what would be, I know it changes, but would you I guess it's a whole question in itself. Like, have you got any good tips of like how to do effective multi-threading?
So I think one of the good tips for every sales directors is make sure you formalize a commitment early. Okay.
Right.
I think we talked a little bit about that. Sales directors sometimes look at deals in stage 5 or 6. Make sure you get involved in the important deal in stage 2 and do that hard qualifications, and make sure your sales guys has got a very clear business case about why he's selling to these customers, and get the customers to tell you in his own words why he thinks he needs your technology. Because he's supposed to be selling when you're not here. Yeah. That's what we help. Yeah. We hope that he's selling to his colleagues and his boss. So you need to make sure very early business case is very well understood. The outcome is understood by the customers. If you've managed this very well early in the sales cycle, the rest is simpler execution.
Yeah.
That we can teach you the step. But that very strong message of value and commitment needs to happen early. Sometimes I'm being accused of being like, oh, value again. No, but this is what you need to do. Value has to be understood on both sides early. I know that some people, I sometimes review sales process, and people say, first meeting, discovery, second meeting, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we do the price in stage, or negotiation in stage 6. I'm like, no. We do negotiation in stage 2.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have my negotiation in stage 2, I don't know if I'm burning gas for nothing. Yeah. So I want an early business case, validated. We know very early, because so many things can happen afterward, if you don't. So I just think, like, make sure you get the hard stuff early. I think that would be, get the hard stuff early.
We've got
the other day I was helping somebody, and he said, oh, I've got an 8 months infosec process. I was like, whoa, you should start with this. Go and tell your customers, you look interested. By the way, are you ready for an 8 months infosec process? Well, they're going to run. I said, well, you want them to run as early as possible because you save yourself 8 months.
That is a great caption for this episode. You want them to run as early as possible. It's
Yeah.
so true. You don't want to be
Yeah.
wasting time.
Yeah.
And the whole phrase of, what is it? Like, if you want to do hard things, if you want an easy life, or if you want to do easy things, if you want a hard life, it's the same
Yeah.
with sales, right? You've got to put in the reps early. On this then, so coming into that, you mentioned a bit about like jumping in earlier, helping your teams. When it comes to cross-team support, the question I sent across to you was like, how do marketing and enablement, unintentionally make your lives harder as reps? But also, I would like to caveat me out, what do they do well? Like, how can they help?
Yeah. So, by the way, I think a lot of the problems that we get into with marketing and sales enablement is a
Yeah.
lack of alignment of objectives and clarity of objectives. Because, I still see sometimes like, oh, okay, we've got to do X sessions of product training and da da da. There's a new version coming in. We need to train them on the new version. So, your rep are already immersed in their product. But when do we talk about, value creation, value analysis? When do we talk about, having specific sessions around important discovery questions? We know that with AI that the most important thing is prompting, yeah? It's not what comes out at the end. It's the questions, the way that you articulate this. We don't do enough of this, with sometimes our sales enablement team. And to be honest, I will not blame the sales enablement team and I will not blame marketing, because in the end, we as leaders also have a role to play in terms of what they do. And when you meet some of the marketing colleagues I work with, they're all about value and impact and stuff like that. So it's about it's that orchestration, that alignment. I think that needs to happen. But the challenge is always quality versus quantity. We want less stuff of better quality. I mean, the sales time, is increasing. Okay, so we need more time with the customers, and then we put more stuff for people to do. So technically, we are taking time away with the sales, from the sales guys by putting some time training that might not be the best, and therefore it's like counterproductive. So when you align key objective, what do you want, what's important from your sales enablement. I mean, I'm a good fan of role play, and so that's what I do. Yeah, I put some role play together, but sometimes sometimes people might have different views of how they want to do things. I think marketing, especially when you have a good product marketing team that is able to understand the product and how to translate it into benefits and value for the customers. This is what this is where really marketing can help. Be able to really understand that, define the ICP, making sure the USP are well understood, helping you with the definition of the territories, key messaging. That's what we want from marketing. But I think in general, sales has become sales now is a team sport, yeah, because it's very rare that customers will see only 90% of the salesperson in meetings.
Hmm.
You'll see people from legal, you'll see people from infosec, some stakeholders, executive briefing, technologists. So the big challenge for the sales guys in this complex deal is to orchestrate all of this.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just organizing meeting because people are so busy, that, and then you say this deal. I remember it's like, we said this deal is priority, and then you're telling me the next meeting is in 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, you've got to do 3 bits of training and
Yeah.
update the CRM and all this sort of stuff. Okay, I can definitely see that. So, and I think from the people that I've also interviewed as well recently, it's kind of like the supporting teams that want more tools or want more content, when actually what the real answer is, what you're saying is you want your reps more time in the field, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as long as what they're doing basically any form of like admin, or they can prove almost that it is 100% going to effectively help them out in the field, just ignore it. It's like kind of like it that you don't want
Yeah.
waffle like I'm doing right now. But then On challenge 5, so the last challenge we've got before we go to the guest challenges, and you mentioned it there on, like, role play, like, how do you safely kind of ha pressure test, your teams before, either pitching whatever stage of the deal they're at, or, like, how do you train them? And, like, if you can be, like, as practical as possible, I often find that provides the most helpful answers, like.
So when people get onboarded, sometimes they get 2 weeks or 4 weeks of training of stuff, which you can't. I mean, nobody can assimilate so
Yeah,
much data in 4 weeks
yeah,
and be effective, because you just like rolled over into data, and you don't have the experience in the new company to understand, is that useful or is that not useful? So you just swim in content, okay? And then people will always say, oh, this is on that platform and that platform, and so you're spending your time trying to. In fact, the only thing that the sales guys probably need to start with is the sort of the 3 minutes high level value proposition, the elevator pitch. That's what they need. And what they need to do after, once they have it generic, is they need to learn to personalize it to the customers. So that's what, in role play, I think that's the type of things that you want to do. This is these customers. Go and find out more about the customers. Tell me how I can apply this product to them and why it should matter to them. And once the sales guys know that, and he knows how to engage, and I mean, he's 70% effective because he knows how to pitch and adapt. So like that, he's able to help people find the impact about the product. So I think that's what you want to do. The next thing you want to do is, how do I manage competitive discussion effectively? So I need to know about the cost of doing nothing. Why would people decide just to say the way they are?
yeah.
And the key competitors that you have. Once they know this, they can negotiate quite a bit of the first, sales process, and then they can get support for pre-sales for the more technical stuff. So, I think for me, that's the two things.
I like that a lot. That's really interesting. So it's,
Less is more in situation. You know what I mean?
yeah, you almost want to and I heard this once as well. It's like one enablement person I spoke to actually doubled their on like the training program, but made it half as intense. And basically, I guess it's kind of following what you said. It's like, I don't care about learning about the competitors and stuff right now. If I'm learning a new product, I need to know what the product is first before you even start throwing that into the mix, which makes a lot.
Yeah, but always in the context of the customer. That's where you need to go in the next phase. So product, you need the basic.
Yeah.
But what does it do to the customers? Because in the end, you're gonna have to talk to the customer. So
No.
he doesn't need to know everything about the product. You just need to know how it can help. And as a sales guys, if you can just give them that basic knowledge, then the rest they will learn, and get them to do a bit of a role play to start with. Instead of 4 weeks product training about why is that blue versus red, or it's like
Yeah. That's like,
so I'm
yeah.
not advocating that we should not train people on their product. Okay, that's not what I'm advocating. But what I'm saying is we don't need to make them product expert. We need to make them domain, expert or competent. So understanding the customers, the challenge of the customers, and how the product help, and then let them experience themselves on, small customers and small leads, so they can try to get to understand that. And I think that's the best way to start with, anyway. And when you are, if you're taking 18 months sales guys, then it becomes, a little bit more difficult, because what you're finding out is what is obviously good at and what is not good at. And what is not good at might not be a product situations, or companies are usually good about training their product. They're not necessarily good at training on sales or training on communications, and I still see sales guys that can answer questions about their product, but they can't easily pitch, and they can't easily, change the narrative based on the customers, because they don't have that fluency of language, or flexible brain in order to do that.
Yeah, spot on. And I think what the one thing you're saying, or how I've internalized it in my caveman, super simplistic brain, is like it's training them to be really good listeners as well. It's like, rather than just kind of bombard them with features, but then that feature stuff is important for when you get further, maybe down the line.
I'll just say one thing. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I think I talked about this earlier. you have to be curious. You want to be a sales guy, a good sales guy, you have to be curious. You have to, want to understand, know how to, to ask the right questions, ask the follow-on question, not just one question and stop. So, peel the onions, as we say, up. So you end up in the
I know you're going to give me a hard time trying to figure out what I should thumbnail this episode. You said many, many good like little one-liners, which are like, damn, that's good. Right. That said, a bit short on time, but we can do quick fire. So we're going into the community questions now. So this one's from Nadia Davis at Caliber Mind, VP Marketing. She said, and this was my question I wanted to know earlier, AI is taking over. What do you think about AI personalized outreach, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
So look, I think we have to embrace it. I mean, look, I'm saying AI, so we have to embrace it. And AI has been great for productivity in sales. Okay. All the account plan that you want to do. Okay. Now you can get so much
Yeah.
more information to help you prepare a sales campaign. AI has really changed the way that we do stuff. So I think that's great. Then I think the challenge with personal outreach with AI is that you sometimes sound a little bit like everybody else. But for the junior sales guys, having, a copilot that helps you with the right question, the right message, I think that's great. And so then there's the ugly. Obviously, sometimes the AI always want to have an answer on everything. Yeah. So you might be given some information that is maybe out of date or not current, or, and, if you don't know how to manage this and verify this, you can be obviously given, some sort of false information, or you might be relying on something that is not current or not topical. So
Then
yeah,
that goes back to what you said earlier, isn't it? About like you need to train the reps enough in a way where it's like if you're going to leverage AI effectively, you still need to know how to use what makes sense, what
yeah,
is
you need to know how to use. You need to understand also your customer, so you'll know, oh, I cannot use this, or I can use this. Let's not forget, I'm, sometimes I said I'm very data driven. Yes, I am data driven, but sales 50% is psychology.
Mm-hmm.
How do you convince people? How do you react? How do you interpret, a tone, all these type of stuff. So as a sales guys, the AI will give you some information. You need to go use it, test it, and then see how people are reacting out of this. So there is a judgment that people have to use. If they don't use that judgment in call, then that can go really west.
Mm.
So I think that's the biggest challenge that we have today, is to build experience for the younger generations, because we are very assisted, and I use, obviously lots of AI stuff as well, but you have to make your own judgment about stuff, and you have to also keep an element of humanity, failure, risk, that's also part of your human nature. You need to be able to see that. So there's a bit of, I'm forgetting the word now, but we all have got a frailty. We all have got some plus and minuses, strengths and weaknesses. And when you're with people, this is what separates you from the robot. And
Well,
this is part of nation.
you just gave me an idea, which is what I wrote down on my whiteboard here. I was looking at this the other day from emails I used to send when I was like before out of college, uni, just trying to get my foot in the door, and they were ridiculous, right? They were like a bit outrageous, like, "Hey, I'll take you for a tennis lesson," or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I was reading them back, and I was actually like, "Wow, these weren't. Look, they're not great, but it had some personality in it." And like the goal now is almost not to sound like AI. And even if I don't use AI to write it, because AI is modeled off like what a typical email is. And I was like, do you know what? I might get more success these days if I revert back to like who I was, or like a bit more casual.
But I think we should, that's what we do. Use the AI to collect data and information and insight. Okay.
And be the
Use
human.
it to do this.
Yeah.
And then, get some output from it about what they believe is the right approach, but then make it human and stuff like that. We're still selling ourselves, I mean, people buy people still, whatever we do in sales, I think people know what they're going to buy in stage 1 or 2 because they trust. Let's not forget, people buy on trust most of the time. So they need to make sure that they just don't have the guy that is just regurgitating AI stuff. Because when the shit hit the fan, they'll need somebody to be here strong that they can trust. And that's what they're probably testing in the early days. So, sorry, I think that's war, by the way.
It goes back to your point as well about posting on LinkedIn as well and being like showing that you're a human so that if they do look you up, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
he is. It's all connected. We got two quick questions to get through. Maybe do quick
Okay.
fire. Next came in from Pierre van der Fusten over at Adobe. He asked if you could change one thing about how marketing and sales work together today. What would it be? Is it alignment?
I think I would give them the same objective. I hate the fact that number of leads and pipeline, and they might get paid on this.
Yeah.
No, I would pay on originations and the number of dollars sold.
So would you
Because
compensate marketing too the same way?
yeah, on outcome.
Hmm.
Because otherwise you end up having, we talked about this, overflow of leads outside ICP. I don't care about ICP. Now you're asking me to do the qualification that you should have done.
Yeah.
Then give me the information that I need along all the stage of my process.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you, something on outcome.
Mm.
And by the way, Mr. Marketing, if you think your sales guys are not good enough, then
Pick up the
either
phone.
help them make them better or find another company.
That's fair enough. Okay, nice. And I think that's totally fair. I've spoken to a lot of people recently with that problem, and the marketing are getting kind of shouted at, but they're like, "Hey, we overhit our it all comes down to quality of leads."
Pipeline these days is useless. It's not about how much you could sold. It's about how much you sell. So how do you execute against this?
But it looks good on a graph.
Yes.
Right, question 8. Final question. Jen Lever, Demand Jen. She's very, very good over at Rhythm. She asked which sales plays are driving the most success, and why do you think that?
Ooh, that's a difficult question because you can take it so many different ways. So, I'm more on a B2B, play here. So I think sales play are more of a supporting tool than a reason why you're going to close a deal. For me, I think the quality of your discovery will decide which sales play you might want to use. And it's at that point that you'll know if you want to use this one or this one. Otherwise, you'll take the risk of having people that are just, if it's a B2C or just a one very transactional sell, a sales play that helps, define outcome of change for the customer might be the best one. But if you are on a complex B2B sales, you need to understand the context of the customers, and what will work with one will not work with the other. So that's my answer. Sorry, I didn't quite answer it, but that's
No, but you also really did, because it is back to basics, and there's no point having, if you call a sales play a vehicle, right, of getting you to A to B, well, there's no point having a Formula One car if it's going in the wrong direction, So yeah, it was a very, very good answer to a very good question, to be honest. Right. The last question is, do you have a question for our next guest you would like me to ask?
So, I think I'm going to ask something about the best sales enablement what is the best sales enablement technology that you implemented and why?
Perfect.
Because there's a lot happening in sales enablement at the moment. There's a lot of new tools. There's also tools that were so popular that I'm here is people are taking them out of the sales enablement stack. So maybe what's the technology that has brought the most rewards?
Nice. Do you have a favorite?
In fact, not really. Because maybe I'm gonna answer. I think in the end, it's about content more than the tool. So if you wanna really, as I said, I quite like role play. So it's not like I don't really like the one directional tools. I like to have exchange because that's also how you build the character of your sales team. But I believe these days there are tools that obviously, when I was humanizing autonomy, we used to be able to look at emotions and stuff like that. So I'm thinking like maybe now AI becoming a bit more sensitive to human behavior, it might be new generation of tools are really help the sales guys to be more effective in his communication, in his negotiation.
Yeah.
For
Awesome.
sure.
Well, I will answer that, ask that, sorry. And
Yeah.
Arnaud, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Sam. And I'm looking forward to looking at the outcome of all the sessions.
Yeah, we'll give it a go. Right.
Okay.
Cool.